Um, let me start over for those of you that didn't hear me. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today is our first professional roundtable in a regional format of the 2023. And we are so excited to have you here. We are going to start with a very interesting topic, psychology and mental health. This event was organized by advisors in Guatemala, Mexico, and Panama. And thank you girls for inviting me to conduct the first minutes of this professional roundtable. So I would like to start to introduce what Education USA is. For all of you that don't know what is Education USA, we are a global network of advising centers. We are accredited from for the U.S. Department of State, and we provide accurate, comprehensive, and current information about the full range of accredited U.S. higher education institutions. If you want to study a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD program in the U.S., but you don't know what requirements do you need or when do you need to start, you can reach out to us, and we will be happy to help you navigate through that process. We also offer free access. All our services are free, so we provide free access to introductory information on U.S. studies. With that, I'm gonna introduce, before going that, we work under a framework of 5 steps. We call it the 5 stages to study in the US. And the first one is about how you can research your options. There are more than 4,000 institutions in the US, and selecting a university might be a complex process. So if you don't know where to start, again, you can reach out to us, and we are going to be there to guide you during the process of reaching your institution. We also provide you help with the to let you know what are the financial, how you can finance your studies, either if it's through a scholarship or maybe through a loan, or the different types of ways that you can finance a program. We provide information about that. The third step to complete your process to study in the US is by completing your application. During this step, we review the requirements that you need. Maybe you are lacking one of the requirements and you need to start working on getting it, or maybe you already have all the requirements that are needed for your program. That will depend on the program that you are interested in. So in this step, we're going to review the requirements, your transcripts, your English tests, your essays, and so on. The first step is once you already get your visa. So I advise you on how you can obtain your student visa, not all types of visa, only the student visa. And the last step is about once you are admitted in a U.S. Institution, you need to start preparing for your departure. You need to start understanding your new environment. So we offer you a set of materials, resources, and information regarding how you can excel and improve your experience in the US. And with that, now I'm going to introduce our guest speakers. And I'm going to start with Dr. Gabrielle Britton. She completed a bachelor's degree in psychology for Vanderbilt University, a master in psychology from Mount Holyoke College, and a PhD in neuroscience and and Psychology from Indiana University in Bloomington. She was an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology and program in neuroscience at Lafayette College in Pennsylvania, and returned to Panama in 2006 through a grant. Her current research consists on basic and clinical studies that examine the interplay of cognitive and psychological process in memory disorders, with a goal of identify biomarkers of healthy and pathological aging for improving early diagnostics of dementia. Her focus is on age-related cognitive impairment, including its progression to Alzheimer's disease. Very simple, as you can tell. Dr. Britton is a research associate of University of South California and Universidad Santa María La Antigua in Panama, and is a member of the Board of Trustees of the City of Knowledge Foundation and of the Board of Directors of Ciencia en Panama. Her hobbies include audiobooks and birding when she can wake up early enough. Otherwise, loves seeing photos of birds and cats online. Thank you very much, Dr. Gabriel, for being here. Our second guest speaker is Maria Fernanda Richa. She has a major in psychology from Notre Dame University and a master's degree in psychoanalytic psychotherapy from the Universidad Complutense de Madrid. She is a PhD candidate in clinical psychology at the Universidad Santa María La Antigua in Panama. She has been a former director of the psychology school and a former dean of the School of Social Sciences at the same institution. Maria Fernanda is a professor of psychology, founder and psychotherapist of the Subversion Clinic. She also provides psychological support and induction for oncological patients and their families for the Centro Hematológico de Panamá. She loves to volunteer at the Te Escucho Panama. Thank you, Maria, for being here. And our last but not least speaker today is Amber Perez Lau. Amber completed her bachelor's degree in psychology at the Universidad Católica Santa María La Antigua in Panama. After completing her undergraduate degree, she worked as a project coordinator and research assistant in the Panama Aging Research Initiative at the Center for Neuroscience and Clinical Unit of INDICASAPT. Amber worked in projects such as characterization of blood-based biomarkers that can detect MCI and Alzheimer's disease, as well as other projects involving mental health and cognition in elderly adults, and a study related to early diagnostics of COVID-19. Her work inspired her to join the University of Florida Clinical and Health Psychology PhD program in 2020 to keep working in research related to cognitive aging. Thank you very much for being here, Amber. And with that, I'm gonna pass the voice to my colleague, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Mabel, for introducing our guest speakers today. We're very excited to have you all here. As you heard, they have like a lot of projects working on. They have a lot of experience, and they are here pretty excited to share with you all. Just before we start this beautiful conversation, just as a reminder that you can start typing your questions at any time of the conversation in the chat box. And then at the end, we'll have a space for you to interact with our speakers via your questions. So with that being said, I would like to ask with you, Dr. Gabriel, and asking you, how did you decide to study psychology and mental health?
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this interesting conversation. Let's see, I went to college in the 90s. I graduated from college in the early 90s, and I decided to study. When I first got to college, I thought I wanted to study pre-med and go to medical school, but I was taking I was in a liberal arts college, I became really interested in some of my more courses in psychology that I took. For instance, I took animal learning and I took cognition. And I was very interested in the way that my biology courses were intersecting with psychology. And mostly, I have to say, it was because of the teachers that I had. So I had these great professors who explained really well and very interesting ways how psychology was a really multidisciplinary field of study, which was what really attracted me to that field. And lastly, because I had an opportunity to do research in somebody's lab very early on, I was only 18 years old, I decided to study psychology. So that's basically the reasons why I went into psychology.
Awesome, Gabriel. Thank you for sharing. And professors made a huge impact on you, I'm sure, in many of us as well, right?
Yes.
So, and I'm sure now you do that for your students. So, Maria Fernanda, I'm sure. Maria Fernanda, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Well, good evening, and thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here having this conversation with you guys. Well, it's kind of similar. I thought about studying medicine also at the beginning. I was pretty young. I had an uncle that was a doctor. So I was thinking of studying something related with psychiatry, maybe at first thinking about being a child psychiatrist. So I asked him to let me sit on some of his interviews with patients. And afterwards, on one of those interviews, he asked, okay, so what did you find interesting about what you've just heard, right? So I said, well, the thing that struck me the most was that the mom never let the kid speak. So he's like, okay, I think you have to study psychology, not exactly, it's not what it's most interesting in this interview, but so I started researching what's psychology. Like, you always think that you know what it is, and then when you really ask the question, it's really hard to find a definition of it until you research it. There's a lot of it's a big, huge, broad discipline, and there's so much you can do with it that you really have to think about what's going to be your road. So it got me, and that's how I started it.
Awesome, Maria. Thank you very much for sharing that history. And now, Amber, would you like to share with us why you decided to study psychology?
Sure. This is gonna sound a little bit random, but I was just interested to see white people where they are. Like, it was all different personalities. We all think different things. We have like very different characteristics, and I had always been interested in that. And like, why am I like this? And even my brother that comes like from the same parents is very different. Like, our personalities are very different. But if I'm 100% honest, I had not decided to study psychology until December, like a month before going into university. I was just like, what should I do? And then I like philosophy since I was in high school, and I was like, it's like the origin of psychology comes from philosophy. And I was like, you know what? That's what happened.
Sorry, Amber, I think we lost you for a little bit at the last part. Could you repeat?
Oh yeah, sure. I think I said I simply fell in love with it.
Oh, good. Yeah, and now we can tell you all fall in love with this based on the work that you all do, right? So thank you for sharing, Amber. With that, as you know, we have a lot of students here who are looking forward to join this field as well, and I'm trying to find their paths there. So the next question for you all would be like, how would you describe a strong profile for a candidate for psychology or mental health studies? How would you describe a strong profile? And Maria Fernanda, do you want to start this time?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so that's kind of hard to define. I remember when we were working in La UJMA, in the social science school, and the psychology school specifically inside of social sciences, we had to make a clear definition of what a student's profile should be to study psychology. And it was really hard because of how broad the discipline is, right? Since we were talking about that at the beginning. But I would say that I would concentrate on soft skills. For instance, like it's really, really necessary for a student of psychology to have a very high standard, like ethical position in life. There has to be empathy, like an empathetic capacity. It's important to be interested in social relationships, in interpersonal relationships. How do they work, right? I would say intellectual curiosity. It's like really necessary. And with that, I mean that you have to want to know things, be okay without, like, when you don't know things, so you can learn more, and try to be curious about how does that knowledge impact yourself. I think that's, you know, the whole self-reflecting ability in a psychologist is important. So I think, oh, actually, you will have to love to read. I mean, you need to read a lot and a lot and a lot. So yeah, you know, like reading comprehension, it's important. I would say those are one of the abilities that I believe are in a profile.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Maria Fernanda. And Gabriel or Amber, whoever wants to join and add something else to what Maria Fernanda said about the profile for a student who is interested in psychology.
I think Maria Fernanda took all the good answers.
All the good answers.
But I would also add to that, for instance, along the lines of empathy, that a good psychology student is also, you know, has a very flexible way of thinking, and that goes along with what you said about admitting when you don't know something, or also being open-minded, open to diversity, open to, you know, not being judgmental, for instance, in ways that I think that sometimes, you know, we find that laws are made that exclude people and exclude marginalized groups, and people have to be able to put their knowledge above, for instance, like their religious beliefs and things like that. I think that's very important. To be a psychologist, you have to be open to how diverse the world is. I would only add that to the many things that Maria Fernanda said, which I agree with 100%.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Yeah, I also agree with everything that both have said before, but as something that I have also found very important, at least for me and other people that I know too, is like being open to the fact that you, as yourself, you also are going to know more about yourself, and you're going to find a lot of things that you might not like, and be open to work on them, because it's a doctor needs a doctor. So the same thing with a psychologist. The psychologist needs a psychologist. Like, especially if you work specifically only in fields of mental health, you need someone to also help you. And it's like, not be afraid to say, okay, I do need help, even as a professional in mental health. You also deserve that too.
Yeah, definitely. I agree on both of those comments. I think about what Amber is saying also, it's interesting because psychology is a discipline where you work, your object of study and work is the same as your instrument of work, right? So you work with your mind to study and understand the mind of other people. So your instrument has to be really well maintained, you know? So being able to ask yourself difficult questions and how your mental health is, and you know, the impact it's having, the work on you, or your personal things, issues, like everybody does, right? So being able to ask yourself about that in any form, you know, like a psychotherapy or psychologist or coach, or, you know, someone obviously capacitated for it. That's important.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria Fernanda. And talking about all of these skills that you think that you know Now, it's not a good thing that you know that the student need to have in order to enter this field. If a student is interested and they still don't have these abilities, what would you recommend for them to start acquiring all of those?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I think it depends on the program that they're going in. I would say that actually having the experience of going to therapy helps you a lot with having all of these skills, right? And then there's most of psychology programs in the USA, the bachelor, it's armed or constructed in a different way that probably in Latin America it does. So since the norms and the regulations are different for every country, to be able to be more, to apply psychology in the USA, you have to be more on a graduate program than on an undergraduate program, right? But in Latin America, some programs, or most of the programs, you have clinical practices or psychological practices in every aspect of the discipline. So in those practices, you actually get those skills, right? But there has to be a structural, I believe that it has to be a structural aspect of those skills to be able to nurture along the program.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say, like, if you don't have those skills and suddenly you're going to acquire them. But I think I agree. Young people have, especially younger people, have a great capacity for change and for learning. And, I would recommend also that if you think you're interested in psychology, read a few articles also on the history of psychology. I think we learn a lot about a field by understanding where it comes from. Like Ambar said, it comes from, philosophy and the study of mind, and how then ultimately the application of the scientific method to the study of the mind. And you might find also, as Maria Fernanda says, that in the US, for instance, one of the things that I think is a real benefit to have gone to college in the United States, as I did, is that psychology is a bunch of different things. You study animal learning, you study development, cognition, it's strongly mathematical. You have to study biology and chemistry. And so it gave me the opportunity to see that very strong, multidisciplinary aspect of psychology that ultimately I ended up, working in neuroscience. I'm a brain scientist today, but I always say I'm a psychologist before I am a neuroscientist, because that's where I started. And so I think that, looking back, it's much easier for me to think like, well, what advice would I give younger people who think they might want to study psychology, is to understand that psychology has many different fields. It's not just, working with people, for instance, or working as a mental health professional, but mostly it's about the skills that you acquire, and that beautiful combination between analytical skills and humanities. I think that young people are very, very capable of figuring out what they want, especially if they're in a program where they have many options. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabriela.
Yeah.
Amber, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I 100% agree. I think I would say that there are some things that are very innate, like they're things that you are born with and that they're very natural for you. It's just like training them with time. But it also depends on the goals that you have. Like, what would you like to do? Where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a therapist? Do you actually like research? Do you like clinical evaluation? There are too many options. Like, do you like other field of psychology that is not clinical? Do you like maybe industries or school, or something like completely different? Do you like fashion psychology? Do you want to work in a publishing place? Like, it depends on like what you want and what your goals are, and depending on that, like, you can search for paths to go closer to the place that you want to get. It's funny because I was actually talking with some undergrads today, and we were like, okay, so who wants to be the first author of this poster? Is someone that it's actually wanting to like continue in academia or something like that. And one said like, you know what, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, okay, that's okay. And it's good that you know where you want to go. And it's also good, like you had this experience, you saw that you liked it or not, and then you have decided to go to another path. So it's just about trying different things and seeing like, oh, I actually like this or not. And talking a little bit about my personal experience, Uzma is very oriented to psychotherapy, which is something that I really liked. And even today, even if I do like research and I also do evaluations in the PhD, I still love psychotherapy. And so but life has taken me through different paths. And this is why I ended up here doing a little bit of the things that I like. And so that's just look for those opportunities to like say, okay, you know what, I really like this and I'm going to continue like doing this.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I love the paths that you mentioned. Some of them I didn't have an idea that they exist in psychology. So I think this is very interesting, right? But like for our audience to hear from you all that there is not only one path, the one that we all think is the only one. There are many, many others that they are going to be discovering while they are going through this path, as Gabriela started sharing. Like I was a psychology first, and then I decided to go in this different, not different, but continuing in neuroscience area, right? With that being said, in the US, and based on the experience that you have in the US, you may know about the optional practical training that students who are international have 1 year to work in the country in this country. So do you think, based on what we were sharing, an optional practical training would help the impact to decide which path you want to go, or what's the impact that you think an optional practical training could have in one of the students?
I think any experience is good for figuring out what you want to do. I mean, like Ambar said, you can work with a research group for a whole year, and if what you come out of there is, you decide, well, I don't want to be a researcher, then that's a step forward because something was discovered in that experience, and still you learn skills. So I think the option of practical training is wonderful, and it also may bring out something that we didn't even know we had. So you may discover something about yourself or some skill that you have that you didn't know you had. And, you may discover you're a great teacher and you're a great lecturer, and you didn't know that beforehand because we didn't have those opportunities, all through high school, for instance. So I think that and no experience is wasted as long as something is learned during that time.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I would say that in the normal process of a student, you first figure out what you don't want to do before figuring out what you want to,
It's like pruning. It's pruning.
Exactly. It's like a constructive process, right? So it's like, building block on top of building block until you get there. But of course, I mean, practical training is always good. It's inserting yourself into a position where you have to, you're not just theoretically learning something, you're being someone in a, like putting yourself in those professional shoes. So that's always a good experience. You learn a lot of it. And I would dare and say too that you as a student, you can learn about your whole academical experience as a whole, like everything. It can give you some knowledge of yourself and what you want to do or what you don't want to do. So I think you as a student, you should apply and get like as most experiences, as much experiences as you can, as many. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, one of the things that I tell students sometimes here in Panama, where there's a lot of research going on here, but there are many young people interested in research, and I tell them, if you can't find a spot in the exact research space that you want, work in research in any other spot. Even if you think you want to be, you know, a psychologist and you don't have a chance to work in a psychology research lab and you end up working in a, you know, geology research lab, you still learn about research. And so there are certain skills that are transversal and we can learn them across many different environments while we become more mature. And that we get too from that practical experience is learning that to be mature and to act and work well in groups.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think the question, it was also like about OPT, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, as an international student here, my experience with like OPTs and things like that, like I do not actually have that because of the program, but I will also agree that it's definitely something I will recommend, depending on what kind of, you know, work you want to do. If you have an idea of something you specifically want to work on, there are like many opportunities, like many opportunities to things that you could do as the research assistants, volunteers, etc. If, for example, you might not have the possibility of doing an OPT, also volunteering is also awesome. It's something that helps you learn a lot. And again, it's just helps you to the pruning process, right? It's like, I like this, I don't like this. And at the end, as Dr. Gabriel said, it does help you grow. Whatever you do, it's an experience that is gonna change you as a professional.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much for all your recommendations. Definitely, if you're a student and you're listening today, take advantage of every single opportunity that comes your way to continue learning. I'm just going to do a quick pause here to remind our audience that if you have any questions, I know I am enjoying a lot this conversation. It just keeps going. But if you have any questions, feel free to type them on the text box and then on the chat box, sorry, and then we'll go to them at the end of the session. We're going to continue talking about different topics here, but we want to hear your questions as well. With that being said, if someone, and Amber, thank you for sharing your experience about all the opportunities that you find there as a student. So if someone decides to go and study in this field, what do you think are the job opportunities and trends for someone who studied this degree?
Depends. Yeah, so the other day I was in a conference and I saw this really interesting job opportunity for someone that is already like a clinician, and they had this like about like a cognitive program. And so you are like a person trained and virtually you help them develop this cognitive program. And so I was like, whoa, look at that. Like, we have actually many opportunities depending on what you want to do. And it's like, the reason why I came to study to the US and like getting a PhD in clinical and health psychology was because I wanted to have opportunities. I wanted to say, you know what, if I don't actually want to be a clinician, I can be a researcher, or if I want to do the two things, I will continue doing the two things that I like. But it's about searching the things that you like, and also depends on like where are you going to land, like where are you going, which country. Like, for example, in Panama, there are like 8 neuropsychologists. So we know like like neuropsychologists are needed, especially like in the public system. But here there are also opportunities, for example, for bilingual neuropsychologists. There are people looking for bilingual neuropsychologists that can do like Spanish and English. Like, it depends on the country, the place, and also like what you like.
Thank you so much, Amber. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that it's a difficult question to answer because it's really broad. I mean, I think because of our job descriptions or our profiles, we're focusing on more clinical or neurosciences or cognitive psychology. But I mean, psychology, you have social psychology, that's a huge branch, right? And then you have all the educational psychology, which is another huge branch. And in each of those, you have the research area, then you have the practical area, and then you have the one that's more of a public policy constructor in those areas. So there's so many things I can't like pinpoint like prioritize some or something. But I would say that in today's world, with all the technology and everything, there's also some opportunities being developing on the whole artificial intelligence or telemarketing aspects of it, and there's some psychologists going into that, know how to construct I'm not very good with the technology things, but the algoritmos, how to say that in English? Algorithms, right?
Algorithms, yeah.
Algorithms, for instance, for social media, and they get psychologists to work on that, for instance. So there's a lot,
Yeah, there's a lot. And so that's one of the benefits of the multidisciplinary nature of psychology, is that it prepares you for many things. It's not the same as, being a chemist, which nothing wrong with being a chemist, but it's a narrower field in terms of all the different things that are touched upon in the area of chemistry, versus psychology is so broad. Just from a perspective of research, I'm a research scientist, and I'm not a clinician, and I've been working in research for more than 30 years. And whenever a space opens up in a research group, my first recommendation is always for a psychologist, a young psychologist, somebody who has studied psychology, because they're the ones who make some of the best research assistants and the research collaborators, because of everything that they've learned. I mean, it's kind of interesting. In Panama, research is growing, and there are different foundations and institutions that are now hiring researchers. And I like to recommend psychologists, because psychology students, I've observed, have a really great capacity to move toward more biological areas if they need to, toward more technological areas if they need to, and then they have those soft skills that Maria Fernanda talked about. Whereas students of technology, or students of the hard sciences, as they like to be called, are not that good at moving toward the more humanities, the more, it's not bi-directional that way. So several of the students I recommend essentially are psychology students. They are able to work in various different contexts. They can work in genetics, or they can work in biology and molecular biology and biotechnology. And they come with those strong set of skills that we have to learn as psychologists, which also include like statistics, technology, writing, analytical thinking, all those skills in the research that are so important in the research environment. So I find that psychology students are incredibly strong compared to other students of science.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Yeah, that it's very, very important to recognize that, right? Like, what do you like and what area do you want to focus on once you decide to study psychology? Because it sounds like we need them all. So it's important.
Definitely,
that you decide which path you want to take.
There should be a psychologist in every research group. I tell all my colleagues in Panama, every research group should have at least one psychologist, because it really adds a lot to that dynamic that we need to produce really great science.
Something important to consider for those research groups. So with that being said, I think that leads us to my next question, that with these recommendations, what would you say are your top 3 recommendations for anyone interested in psychology?
Well, I'm going to steal something that Maria Fernanda said, which seems sort of like a no-brainer, but it really has to be emphasized, which is like read, read, and read. I know it's hard nowadays with so much technology, and sort of even those of us who love to read less than we did when technology didn't exist. So it's very important to always get back to that, to understand that that's how knowledge is acquired, is by reading, and not only through experience. So it's very important to keep reading and learning from other people's experiences and not just your own. So my very strong advice would be find time for yourself, find time to take a walk, find time to have conversations with real life people, find time to interact with human beings, and also to read.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I would say talk with people. Again, I'm just gonna like talk about my personal experience. I had actually like a really great education. And one of those things here, Dr. Breeden and also Professor Richa, they were both guiding me through actually my whole career. And I think one of the things was like that I did was just ask, what do you do? What do you like? How did you get here? I remember asking, I had like an interview with Professor Richa, like, I don't remember, it was like first year, but like asking, okay, so like
First year, yeah.
what kind of patients? And well, Dr. Britton, she was my boss for many years, and she was actually one of the people that pushed me to apply to a PhD, and I thank her that I'm here right now. And it's about you finding, I think the first recommendation is ask. Don't be shy to ask people, ask to see like if you see yourself there. And the second search, find your place.
Thank you, Amber.
I think that's a great recommendation. I think, but just to add up, because I would agree on both recommendations of Gabriel and Amber, is to question yourself. You know, like just ask everybody anything. Psychologists, we tend to like to talk a lot. So I'm pretty sure that your professors in psychology are going to be more than flexible and receptive to any question, any personal question of their professional pathways and their careers and their jobs and everything. Like we do like to talk a lot about psychology. So that ask questions, you approach people, you know, approach any psychologist that you can find and talk to them. Then they're gonna give you enough time to figure something out about yourself. But also question yourself a lot, you know, like don't be afraid. I think that in psychology, there's the moment where when you think that you know a lot of something, and psychology is just like the human mind, you know, it's dynamic, it flows, it's not a fixed concrete object. So you always are going to be able to learn something else. So you always have to be in a I don't know position. That's what I used to tell my students, right? So you have to be always in the I don't know position to be able to ask new questions and to figure new things out, right? So I would say that, yeah, read a lot. Yeah, that's Gabriel is right. You need to read a lot. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing, and you both, besides reading, you both were sharing about mentors, right? That you had professors. Amber was mentioning that you two were mentors of here. So with that, I would like to ask, how do you recommend or how do you start to develop a relationship with a mentor?
Amber, I think you should take the lead on that because
well, yeah, I'm going through like different mentors right now, and something that really strikes me is that everyone is very different. Dr. Breeden, for example, she's very hands-on. She's very she's a person that it's more like she's there with you all the way. I know here they're a little bit more hands-off, like we call them that way because they're a little bit more like, okay, so you go and without training wheels and let's see where you can get. And so it's if you need something you ask, but like this is what we're gonna do, and then you can go ahead and just like go. It's like there's a little bit more independence, but I know that not all students have that type of relationship with their mentor. So it will depend on like your style as a mentee too, like getting to know yourself as, are you someone that you need like constant reminders, or are you someone that could do work on you like by yourself? Can you like handle a to-do list, a calendar? It's about like also seeing if you share interests with your mentors. Like, do you both like the same thing? Do you both like do you both like to like research on neuroscience, or do you actually like more like studies on education? Like what is it that you like? It's like, I think it will be establishing like, first of all, interests, things that unite you more with your mentor, and also like your different styles. How would you be the kind of person that would like to communicate with your mentor all the time? Or would you be like, okay, let's just send each other a message every week? It depends about like knowing yourself, and then like starting to say, this is what I need. Something that I would say that is very, 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 very important is always communicate. Because sometimes as mentees, especially when I was starting and I was being a little bit more independent, I was like, should I not? Should I talk with my mentor? Should I ask them this? Should I ask them that? And at the end, I learned like the best way of knowing what they want is asking them what they want. And so, as well as if you're unsure of things about like even your own like research or anything about like what your clinical, even anything that you have, even like, for example, also not being afraid of communicating when you're having hardships, because we're not made of stone. Like, we obviously have some things that might happen on the way, and as a student it's completely normal that things might happen, like life happens. And so it's also communicating with your mentor, hey, I'm having difficulties on this and it's really hard for me, and mentors will usually understand whatever is happening. But yes, it's about, I think it's very important, communication, and it depends on what you need to as a student.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that for me, I think there's like two kinds of mentors, like two different types. You know, you have like your informal mentors that and the formal ones. You know, like the formal ones are, as Amber is describing, you know, like your thesis advisor, your research mentor, your I don't know, practical training mentor or supervisor. And then there are some mentors that are more like informal, you know, like it's more like it's kind of you find them along the way. And what you need to do to nourish that relationship, it seize the moment. I mean, if you find someone along your academic program or your practical training that you can resonate with, like you feel that there's a connection, that you feel that you would like to understand how that person thinks, or how do they work, or you find that it makes sense to you what they do, just reach out, you know, like reach out and seize the opportunity to learn from them. And yeah, I would say that.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria Fernanda and Amber. Those are great tips to find a very nice mentor, just like Amber. She is in the US, as she mentioned, thanks to the mentors that she had during her career, right? Like, of course, in part that, right? So thank you for sharing, Amber. And then Gabriel, we lost you for a little bit, but we're happy that you're back. We were talking about mentors, but I would like to close with the last question that I have for you all, and then we can give a space for questions if we have from the audience. And the last one, just in a few words, if you could let us know what is the most fulfilling part of doing what you do.
You're on mute.
I was saying that.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me
Okay.
now? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
going on.
Yeah, Gabriel, if you listen to us, you are pause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
she
well,
paused for a bit.
I think she's getting like disconnected.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, while she's coming back, I think she's having some issues with her internet connection, but Amber, Maria Fernanda, whoever wants to go and share the most fulfilling part of working for this.
Okay, so I would say there's so many things that I love about being a psychologist.
Mhm.
And I always think that it's more like a lifestyle than a job. But I would say that one of the things that I like the most is the broad range of the impact when you do a well job. Like when the job's well done, it's incredible how does it impact people, and all the indirect consequences of that influence or that result, right? Because when you have an impact, for instance, as a psychotherapist, on the well-being, the global well-being of someone, that person in turn has better relationships with their families, their better parents or better sons and daughters, and they have a better relationship with their friends, or they do better at work. They go less to the doctor. I mean, there's research about it. So it's incredible how it repercutes, like it's a domino effect. So that's always, it's very humbling to see the range of the impact of the work, and it's wonderful. I would say that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, I would agree with that. That's exactly what I was thinking. Once, like, you see a patient and he's like, whoa, you have changed so much, you have improved so much. But I will also say that for me, it's the people that I meet along the way. Not only like the patients, but also colleagues, mentors, people that like stick with me all the time. And it's like I learn much more from everyone I meet. And it's like, it's incredible. Like, you build a network of people supporting people. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it's like you see, you have colleagues, and it's like you always know, like, oh yeah, I'm having this problem, who can I contact? Oh no, wait, I know someone you can contact, like, for this problem specifically. Yeah, and it's like you always have this, and it's like it's incredible, like the connection with psychologists. I do not know how it's in other professions, but it's really beautiful, like what I have seen over the years, and so many people doing so many different things. You always know someone that's like gonna do a specific field that, like, okay, I definitely need help from you, and like I've never done this before, but I know like I can count on you.
Yeah, that's true. I never thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with those impressions as well. In the research environment, probably the most satisfying thing about being a research psychologist in Panama is watching the culture of research grow and watching young people learn new skills and then apply them to all the problems that we have in our country. We have so many challenges, and there are more and more researchers every year, and it's really great to be a part of that culture where we are constantly training new students. We can publish great papers and we can get them into really high impact journals, but nothing is more satisfying than seeing someone go off and do a PhD like Amber.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I would say thank you for being here today, but thank you for doing what you do, because I don't know what I would do without psychologists in my life. So with that being said, Maria Luisa, she's our advisor in Guatemala, and she's been leading the questions. And so, Maria Luisa, do we have any questions from the audience today?
Yes, we do. Thank you. It was so interesting to hear about your experiences. And I try to categorize the questions so that they would make a little more sense. I myself studied as an undergraduate student in the US, and I chose psychology as my major. So I enjoyed your your insights and your experiences very much. And so talking about research, we got a couple questions regarding this. One of them is, as a senior, I feel my college does not give me these opportunities to participate or be able to be part of research and get to know more about the field. Do you have any specific communities or places where a student can be active and learn more about the field? And I mean, they mean research in psychology. And then the other question is, would you say that having research skills is a must-have to be able to study in the US? What do you think? Who wants to take the lead?
Well, that's hard to say that so your university doesn't have opportunities for research, but you're interested in research. Probably one of the best places then to start is to read, general research articles in psychology. You can Google something like, what are the top 10 questions in psychology research? And you can find articles along those lines, because at least in your own self-motivated world, you can find what sorts of questions are being asked, and maybe even participate in webinars and things like that. There's so many opportunities with technology now to be involved in research. But I believe that if you have the opportunity, even if it's not in your own college or your own university, maybe reach out to someone in the community or a nearby college or a nearby university that may have an opportunity for you, because that's one of the benefits of studying in the US. There's so many more opportunities.
Okay, I think we may have lost Gabrielle on that last bit, but maybe, I don't know, Maria Fernanda, can you help us out?
Yeah, sure. Following Gabriel until she comes back, definitely. I think I would start in the community. I mean, there has to be some research center, some think tank, some organization that does research in psychology somewhere, like maybe a government organization or a private or a subsidiary of any US program, for instance, where you should reach out, because I don't think there's any organization that wouldn't be interested in a student that's interested in research. Okay, so I think everybody would love to have you there. And following Gabriel, yes, I would also study by my own. I mean, go online, get all the webinars you can find, the forums, the Q&As. There's so many things that you can find out, and try and find out also for internship opportunities or overseas practical training. I mean, trying to do a fellowship somewhere else where you can find maybe more opportunities on research. I would say that that would be my starting point. Yeah.
I will just add also, like, researching on APA. Maybe APA has a lot of divisions.
That's true.
The American Psychological Association, and depending on what you're interested, if you sign up for that division, they might have like internship opportunities or research opportunities for students. So that's like a great resource. And I would say, like, the thing about research skills for the US, it depends on what you want. Do you want a counseling degree, or do you want a PhD degree? Do you want a PsyD, or do you just want to do a master's degree? So everything depends on that.
I would do. I mean, I do think that any psychologist needs to have some basic research skills. Okay, yeah. So I would say that the degree of how many or how trained you should be on those research skills vary with your goals. Like, it depends on how like Amber is saying, if you want to be a PhD, you'll need some set of skills that are actually going to be more professional, more trained than if you want to do a PsyD, for instance. It's there's an opportunity of PsyDs in the United States. It's more of a applied clinical doctorate programs instead of a PhD, which is more of a research theoretical programs, right? And if you are going to do a master's degree, obviously you will not need as many skills as for a PhD program. But in psychology, because of the level of reading we have to do, research skills help you, like it's basic, and you need them to organize all the information you're getting. And also research skills help you to write a lot, you know, like with good references, how to search the information you need. Today, the students, I mean, when I was in college, my problem was finding the information because you had to do it, you know, by hand. There was not computers or online databases, right? Now you have the information. So what you have to learn is what to do with it, right? So research skills help you to understand what to do with the information that nowadays you can get so easily. So they're basic. Yeah.
All right, so to summarize, make sure that you are proactive and you find peer-reviewed articles. There are search engines that allow you to read peer-reviewed articles that are for free. So take a look at Google Scholar, for example. But before that, look at the APA fields, like Amber was suggesting. Take a look at what interests you so you can categorize those articles that you'll read. Reach out to the community. And in here, I think the whole aspect of having a mentor, somebody that can help you out in connecting you with someone else. Maybe they know a nearby school or a peer from the past that can help you with research if there is no research at the school you're at. And then looking at internship and fellowship options, maybe in your breaks, maybe look at saving some money and doing some kind of internship or fellowship and research in your summertime or in your winter break, if you cannot do it while you're at school. Another question we got was regarding the levels of study. So from your point of view, what do you think would be more enriching to study abroad in the US? A bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a PhD? And I think this is a very tricky question, right? But do you have any insights on this?
That's a very personal question. I think we all going to have different responses, but for me, if I'm 100% honest and you will ask me again what I would do, I will have study in the USMA again. And the reason for this is because in at least from, I don't know in undergrad, so I cannot talk about that, but in the PhD training, I obviously have learned a lot of incredible things, but for me, I learned a lot about psychoanalysis and a lot about other theories, and it was like very broad. Like it had so many things. And I also learned about industrial psychology and school psychology and like many other disciplines within psychology. And I think that knowledge that I have is very rich. And for me, it has helped me survive as a professional here. And for example, in my PhD, I know weird tests that nobody has ever done here. I know like things like TAT, the projective tests. Like not a lot of people know about Freud, but I know about Freud. And it's like knowing about the origins and then adding like little layers. So I would say it depends. Like it depends on, it's a very personal decision to do. And I think at the end, what I think my difference would be like, okay, maybe in undergrad here, you have more opportunities to do other types of research than maybe in your country of origin. Again, I am talking about my experience because I did have, I did have a great opportunity that guided me to neuropsychology, but it's a different field. Of course, that I know that there might be like more barriers and more limitations to doing it. But with that said, if you do not have the opportunity to study in the US, that doesn't mean that you cannot study in the US at some point. It doesn't mean that you cannot do a master's degree or a PhD. And it's just about like looking for the opportunities and also having consideration that it's part of more the professional than the place. It's more like, how do you train yourself? How do you learn than the place that you're studying in?
Right, and I want to jump in because we do have a couple more questions, but in that regard, thank you, Amber, for all that insight. And as an Education USA advisor, I would recommend that you look at what you want. What are your requirements? What are your expectations? What are your needs? And also, what is your profile? Because that's going to give you a bit of a direction as to what you can apply to, right? And reach out to your Education USA advisor so they can help you out with this reflection. Now, we got a question about OPT. I don't know if any of you know this, but where can a student look for opportunities for the optional practical training? Yes, Maria Fernanda?
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to answer that, because it depends on the universities and the countries that we're talking about, right? So for instance, in the USA, it depends on what level of study you're doing, because in undergrad there's not many options of OPTs, and if there are, they're normally with institutions or organizations that have alliances with the university, right? So that's usually how we do it. And in Panama also it's like that. I mean, the university has alliances with different institutions, and then the students can go and do their OPTs there. In the graduate programs, it's easier because there's many centers where you can apply on, right? So I would say that depends largely on which country or which university you're in.
Right, your context. And in that sense, I would recommend you reach out to your academic advisor. If you're you're doing your undergraduate, reach out to your academic advisor, reach out to your designated school official, who's the one in charge of your I-20, and then explore the routes that you can take to look at any options that there may be available. And stay grounded, maybe, have realistic expectations on this.
And be flexible. Can I add that? Because be a little bit flexible. If it's not an OPT, like a formal OPT, I remember at Notre Dame, you could reach out to the social services office and you could volunteer on something that had some relationship with your career or your major, or you could, like volunteer with a professor on doing something that it didn't have to be formal. So be a little bit, like flexible, just trying to find out on informal ways too.
Yeah, I was also going to add that, for example, I have to do an OPT by the end of, I have to do an internship and I have to apply to an OPT to finish my PhD. But I know that some people also do CPTs, which are by semesters. And that's also another option. And you don't have to do full time. You can do half time, I think, instead of doing an OPT.
Cool. And we actually had a session on OPT and CPT yesterday, and that will be available at the Education USA Mexico YouTube channel if you want to take a look at that. And now we have a couple of specific field questions. One that I think could be fun is, how can mathematics and psychology be combined in a research setting?
Oh, wow.
Dr. Britton, that's yours.
Yeah, that's for her, definitely. Is she in?
Yeah, mathematics can be, applied to essentially any setting.
Anything,
Yeah. So having mathematical skills is pretty useful, and combined with psychology, well, it's like the bonus plan. Because we're constantly working with quantitative and qualitative data, and we need novel ways to look at the data. So, having a mathematical person in a research group is fundamental. I mean, one of the great things about working in a research team is how everybody brings different skills to the table. And always the ones with mathematical skills are, in the minority, unless you're in a mathematical research group, which we're not in the work we're doing. So very useful to have knowledge in mathematics because of that abstract level of thinking. So if you love mathematics and you love psychology, that's a great match. You can apply it definitely to the research setting and certainly to many other settings.
All right, thank you. And then one question about the types of fields. It says, in the US, colleges sometimes offer psychology, neuroscience, or behavioral science. So what would be the difference in the subjects and the possible jobs? So I think this sheds light into the multidisciplinary liberal arts kind of element. And I don't know if any of you have insights as to how to choose one of those fields as you're defining your major.
Well, so I think psychology touches on all of those, but you know, the programs that I know where I was a professor before I came to Panama was a psychology department, and within that department there was a program in neuroscience. And so psychology was the big umbrella term, and it allowed you to study brain, behavior, cognition from different points of view. But typically programs that are neuroscience, that are called neuroscience or neurobiology, are strongly focused on structure, function, and brain. So you do a lot of molecular biology, biochemistry, and it's a lot more focused on the, you know, the function, the structure, the development of the brain from a biological point of view. And I think that that also opens up the you know, doors to a lot of different types of jobs. I mean, I think one of the things that Maria Fernanda said early on is, for instance, I think Ambar said this too, is that we talked about this, the type of personalities that go into psychology. It's good to like social relationships and to be empathic and to like to, you know, not be somebody who isolates. But sometimes people who work in the biomedical research field can be those type of people. They like to be in the lab and are sort of shy. And so if you are interested in brain and you love biology, maybe neuroscience is more the field. And the other branch of psychology now, so there's brain and there's behavior and there's cognition too. And cognition is strongly oriented in mathematical modeling and coding and computer programming. So it's the field of trying to determine how the brain computes and how the brain, generates categories and how it actually works, like the software, for instance. And so there are a lot of different opportunities, but I tend to really like programs that allow you to explore each of these and not having to choose something so young is kind of complicated. Like, I think I'll only study neurobiology and I'll leave everything else out, and I'm only 19 years old. Doesn't seem like a good way to go. And I think that psychology still has the most options, the most the most diversity in terms of its the different types of subjects you can take in the major.
Yes, thank you. Maria Fernanda?
Yeah, definitely. I was going to add on what Gabriel is. I mean, I agree 100% with what she's saying. Psychology is too of a broad discipline to decide early on in such a specific way of what you're going to study, and that those three branches that the person mentioned is only like a tiny piece of what psychology is. I mean, then you have all the other clinical part of psychology, and then you have all the social one and the academic one, and then the sports one, and then the alternative ones. And I mean, there's so many. So if you can find a program as an undergrad to be able to choose, because in the United States, you normally the curricular system lets you choose one cognitive psychology, one behavior psychology, one neuroscience, one social one educational one developmental one, and so you can pick some of the broader range of psychology. I think that would be most helpful, right?
Yeah, taking advantage of that liberal arts thread that connects the US and the US higher education, and taking advantage of the possibility of exploring different fields within psychology is a huge advantage when you look at preparing yourself within the US higher education system. So that's all the questions we got today. Thank you so much, Maria Fernanda, Amber, and Gabriel. Thank you for being with us. I think Jenny is going to wrap it up for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria Luisa. And well, here you can see our website. You can go and visit and find your closest advising center. And with that being said, thank you very much, Amber, Maria Fernanda, and Gabriel, for your time today. This was very meaningful. I'm sure all of our audience aligns with that. And then, of course, Gladys from Panama and Maria Luisa from Guatemala, who organized this session with me in Mexico. So thank you everybody for being here, for taking the time. This was very meaningful. And then we'll continue promoting this talk with our students with the video that we'll have available for all of them. So thank you again, and looking forward to continue collaborating with you all. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you for the invitation. It was great.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you.